lifting that pad printing machine was a nightmare.
Okay, whoa, wait a second.
Because she would probably kill herself.
Right, I'm the finishing guy and you're the paint guy.
Hello and welcome to Kieser Design. Today it's our third episode of the die making series. We're gonna do some awesome pad printing, and if you want to know why it doesn't have anything to do with labeling your cats and dogs, you should stay with us.
So, today I'm here in the workshop with our printing technician, Matthias Kieser. Say hello, Matthias.
Hello.
And we are going to talk about how we actually print our dials. I actually think that this is the part where the dial and the dial rings are going to become actual watch parts.
Yeah. But right now they could be just random colorful discs.
Yes.
But now they become a real dial. That's true. And I'm always really excited when it comes to pad printing. So I would say we just jump right in and print some dials, right?
Okay, whoa, wait a second. Maybe we should start a little earlier in the process and maybe talk about all the different parts that are necessary for actually printing.
Yeah, and how it works.
Yeah, and how it works,
okay.
And what is the mechanic and the process behind it.
Absolutely no problem. Just let me get my little pad printing machine here and I will guide you through the process. Yeah, and there we have it.
Nice.
Okay, so this is a super old pad printing machine.
How old is it?
Actually, I don't know. It's from Pforzheim. That's the area in Germany where a lot of jewelry companies are located. And it's an early after Second World War model.
So 1950 maybe?
Yeah, 1950s, early 60s maybe.
Yes, so older than the both of us.
Way older than both of us. It's a beautiful piece of equipment and it still works. And it makes it very easy to understand the whole pad printing process. This is not the machine that we use to produce our parts.
So I think most important in the die making process or in the pad printing process is having the right paint, or the paint should be the first thing to figure out before even starting the process.
Yeah, that is true. It all starts with mixing the paint, because the paint has some properties which actually make it possible to do the pad printing at all. It needs some special texture to be able to print with it. It's a two-component paint. I have some of the tubes here that we use. You have the paint itself, and then you have the hardener. It makes it durable. And then, most importantly, I would say you have a solvent. So it's a solvent-based paint system, and the solvent it evaporates from the paint during the process that we will guide you through now, and it makes the paint and the surface of the paint sticky.
How difficult would you say is it to get the right mixture of the paint?
Well, there are recipes for the paint system that come from the manufacturer of the paint, of course. There are a lot of parameters, environmental parameters that you have to control and that you have to take into account when mixing the paint. So the humidity of the air and the temperature.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the temperature is most important. When we had our old workshop and it was poorly insulated, especially in summer, pad printing was almost impossible.
Yeah, I think we did a video in that old workshop where we were super hardly struggling with the paint and all the process. I think it was super hot on that day. The
solvent from the paint evaporated so quickly that it got stuck to all the different parts involved in the process, and a transfer wasn't even possible.
Let's talk about the cliché first.
Yeah, besides the special paint and the pad, really what makes pad printing, I would say. The cliché is, like in this case, a metal plate which has the motif that you'd like to print etched into it. You can also laser it into the piece of metal. Well, the whole idea is to create little pockets that the paint can go into and that form the motif that you can then pick up with the pad. Those letters are really tiny, as you can imagine. They go on the dial, and the thickness of the letters is like 0.1 millimeter or even less. For the little Made in Germany sign that we have on the dial ring, it is absolutely tiny. And that's also why pad printing comes in so handy when printing dials, is you can create super sharp edges with it, and it's a very clear print that you get on those parts. But on our more modern pad printing machines and the state-of-the-art pad printing machines that are used in the industry, you normally use sheets like those. They can either be polymer based, where there is a laser etching technique applied to the polymer surface here, or you can use also steel clichés with an etched or a lasered surface.
Okay, well, let's continue with the silicone pad.
So the silicone pad is basically the stamp. The stamp that transfers the paint from the cliché onto the part that you want to print on. And as I said, it's made of silicone. Silicone is very good for that reason because it's super flexible, so it can press down and flatten itself onto the cliché, get back to a certain shape, and then transfer the picture on the part. And it also has a good way of holding on to the paint but releasing it at the end of the process. So it needs to pick up the sticky paint, but it needs to be willing to let go of it when it gets in touch with the dial. Well, I actually brought some examples of materials that have been printed from different fields, not from watchmaking. This, for example, is a knife that we use, and the little logo here is probably also pad printed because this is also a slightly curved surface. Or like on those calibers we use, the logo here is probably also pad printed. Or you might be familiar with the little Lego figures.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. And for the Lego figures, the pad printing comes in handy because the heads of the Lego figures are round, of course, and you can print a nice face on them with such a soft pad. Yeah.
So now we have the paint, we have the cliché, we have the pad. I think we could do the process, but we need something to print on, and that would be the dials. We have a dial here. Well, the preparation is key as always. They need to be degreased, obviously, otherwise the paint won't stick to it. So that's one of the steps that we need to take before printing. And what is also important for the parts is, like the same with machining, holding on to them on the machine is important. So again, watchmaking is a lot of tool making. So the fixtures that we use on our main machine to hold on to all those tiny parts, we made ourselves. Just needed to make sure that the path of the pad is not obstructed, and then that it's firmly held in place, and that it's positioned absolutely correctly every single time we put in a new piece. Yeah, because of course you need to make sure that everything is in line. What do you think is the most difficult part of the process? To me, the most difficult part of the process is actually to control the viscosity of the paint, because it changes throughout the process. We use a closed paint system on our machine. That's pretty much the biggest advantage of this machine, while this is an open system, so I can roughly describe what the difference is. It just means here you would just put a drop of paint, and then you can use a blade to scrape off the excess paint, and then the printing starts. But
obviously, as the paint is in contact with the air all the time, the solvent evaporates and the properties change, and that is really hard to control if you want to print more than 1, 2 or 3 dials. Now that we print a little series of 25 watches, it's really helpful to have a closed system where you have a closed cup of paint that is always moving back and forth on the cliché, and that is not in touch with the air all the time. So the viscosity stays constant over time, or at least it stays more constant, because still in a closed system the solvent evaporates, and that changes the properties of the whole process and the parameters, and ideally you want to have a constant mix of solvent, paint and hardener, but that is really hard to obtain.
But as I understand it, it is important for the process that at some point the solvent evaporates from the motor?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the basic principle how it actually works is that it makes use of the stickiness of the paint. You would put a drop of paint here, scrape it off with a knife, and then the paint that is stuck in the grooves will get sticky on the surface because the solvent disappears or evaporates. And once that is sticky, you press onto it with a pad, which makes it stick to the pad, so the paint is sucked out of the cliché, and then the other side of the paint now that is exposed to the air will get sticky. And because this is a silicone dome and it is just not as adhesive as the thing you would print on, it will stick to the dial once you press it down onto the dial. Yeah. And then it's transferred, and ideally there is no paint left in the cliché and there is no paint left on the pad, but everything has been transferred from the cliché onto the dial.
So I think that's it with this machine.
Yeah.
We all understood the process of how pad printing actually works, but that's not the machine we use.
No.
For our serial production.
No.
Or for our production of any kind. How did this machine came to you?
I realized pretty quickly that I wanted to have a closed ink system and to make the process more reliable. And I wanted to have more stability in that, so I was looking for an automated machine, or let's say semi-automated, because let's be honest, there is still a ton of manual tinkering involved when printing.
You would still have to sit next to the machine and
of course, and it's still
look at the process.
One at a time.
Yes.
One at a time. All the operations that the machine does, like swinging the arm and activating the pneumatic cylinder, everything is driven by a little camshaft, right? There is a rotating disc with little grooves in it, which basically has the program of the machine on it.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful.
Yeah, when I've seen the machine the first time in action, it makes these noises like an old...
Like a steam engine.
Yeah,
right?
like a steam engine, and it has this roll with the program, and it was so... I felt like in a museum. I don't really like that process. I don't know why, because it's actually super cool, like how you explain it with the sticky color, the sticky paint and all that stuff, and I think it's super rewarding to see the parts finally become watch parts. But I think I like anodizing more, and I would stick to that, and I think you can do the printing.
Yeah, and I don't like anodizing too much because I don't know why I lose patience easier than you do when I'm anodizing, because maybe I've done it for years and so extensively. But now we have found the most adequate tasks for each other, and that's also a big step in the development of the company, I would say.
That's it for today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your little explanation. Introduction. And of course, if you want to see more of how we work here at Kieser Design, how we prepare the dials, how different stuff is made, you should follow us on YouTube. We post regularly. And
also on Instagram, if you want to see
yes.
some workshop stories, for example,
Yes.
and pictures of our nice watches.
Yes.
Thank you very much for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.
Cheers! I'm known for being a little clumsy from time to time.
Yeah, that's why Carolyn is not allowed around the milling machine, because she would probably kill herself.
No, I think the milling machine, since it's not as old as the pad printing machine, has a lot of safety
You can't run the machine
You can't run the machine with your head under the mill or so. But with that machine, with the green dinosaur, it's just something else. It just doesn't care.
You have to check whether the print is good constantly. You have to take a loop and you have to go very close and check it.
It happened that the arm of the machine ran into my head, like super badly. And not only once. If you at one point lose control of the dynamic of the machine and stuff, you just get hit in the face with this machine, and that's why I don't work on that machine anymore.
The green dinosaur doesn't give a damn, it just kicks you in the head.